Hey everybody, it's Hayden here. Welcome to another SATS walkthrough. Today we're going to be looking at the 2024 reading paper for the Key Stage 2 SATS. So let's jump straight in and have a look at the texts, shall we? So there we are, 3 texts as always. We started with a non-fiction this year, Streaky and Squeaky, about these little lovely creatures called Tenrecs. Who's heard of them before? I don't know. Bonus points if you have. Then we've got 2 fictions called The Girl That Walked on Air, Who Walked on Air, and The Leopard. Now, interestingly, still no poetry. If you've been following the SATS for a while, maybe you've been revising, looking at past papers, then you'll know that there's not been poetry for quite a long time, 6 years in fact, at the point of recording. So if you're looking at this in 2025 and you're thinking, I want to touch up, ready for my SATS coming up, or even further in the future, then I don't know, poetry, is it going to come up soon? You'd like to think so. Anyway, before we jump straight into the actual questions, and I will assume that you've seen the texts, we're just going to talk about the test just for 2 minutes. So really interestingly, right, you know that the pass mark is normally around 50%. Like each year it fluctuates a bit, but it's normally around about half the marks. 82% of this paper is made from retrieval questions and inference questions. So just to remind you, retrieval questions is just where you got to find the information in the text, and it's quite simple. Inference is when you have to read between the lines a little bit, use evidence to back up an idea, okay? So I thought that was really interesting. So just from those 2 question types alone, you can pass this test easily. And like most years, it's approximately 2,000 words for all of the texts combined. So you've got to consider how that's going to impact your time in this test, because it takes you time to read 2,000 words. So improving your reading speed is going to be really helpful in these kinds of timed tests. And the mark distribution was pretty fair as well. So across the 3 texts, as you can see here, this is how many marks are in each of the 3 sections. So pretty fair across the board, with a couple of extra marks in the middle text. And I thought one last thing that'd be interesting for you guys is this, because sometimes you might have seen Dylan's video in the past where he's talked about this and kids panic about the 3-mark questions. They think, oh no, I've got to get them. Well, do you know what, guys? 31 of the 39 questions in this paper were 1-mark questions. So do you know what? If you just answered the 1-mark questions and you were pretty accurate with them, you're going to get enough marks. It's okay. But there are 6 2-mark questions, so just think that is 12 marks. And then there are 2 3-mark questions as well, so another 6 marks there. So don't be too panicked if you get stuck on the odd harder question that's 2 or 3 marks. So we're going to dive straight in then to Streaky and Squeaky. Now I know it's very small on the screen. If you haven't had a chance to read this text yet, feel free to pause and read it here, or you can download all these papers from the government website. I'll leave a link in the comments if you want to go and get the text yourself, just to kind of refresh your memory. But I'm going to jump straight into the questions and just answer them as we go. All right, simple as that. If we need to use evidence, I'll put it on the screen for us to see as well. So here we go. Number 1, if I walk through. According to the text, Madagascar is well known for its range of weird and wonderful wildlife. This suggests. So whenever you see these kind of questions, what it's really saying is pick some words in this sentence and work out what it's actually suggesting. So if Madagascar is well known for its range of weird and wonderful wildlife, I'm going to be looking for answers that kind of back up the idea that they're weird and wonderful. So it is very difficult to find your way around the island. It has nothing to do with that. Tenrecs are the most famous animals on the island. Doesn't say that. It says Madagascar is well known, so I understand why people might confuse the phrase well known and just think it means famous, but not really look at the context. There are lots of unusual animals on the island. Okay, unusual means weird, and it says it's well known for its range of weird wildlife. So that looks like the answer. Streaked Tenrecs live all over the world. Again, nothing to do with this statement here. So here we are. This one's true. This one's not true. Nice simple number 1 to get started with. Number 2, read the paragraph beginning, they are not hedgehogs. Right, I've got it down here for you guys so you can always see when it tells you what to look at, it's right there for you. My test tip is also do that. Just go straight to it in the text. Don't read everything around it. Find and copy one word that means the same as met. Okay, simply let's read through it and think what means the same as met. They are not hedgehogs, birds or bumblebees, even if they look like a confused hodgepodge of these animals. Interesting word, hodgepodge. You have encountered a family... encountered. You have met a family of lowland streaked Tenrecs. Okay, encountered is just an up-leveled version of the word met. And that's it. Okay, sometimes you just got to read it through and think, oh, that actually would definitely be replaced with the word. Number 3, how can you tell streaked Tenrecs are social animals? Guys, this question, I'm not going to rant about it too much, but I do not like this question. So let me tell you why I don't like this question. How can you tell that streaked Tenrecs are social animals? Well, here's a bit of text, okay? Let's just find some interesting bits here. In the bottom part of this, are all Tenrecs the same? It says this here. Both highland and lowland streaked Tenrecs are very social animals. and are the only kinds of tenrec that live in family groups. So, this is why I don't like this question. If you just put the text says they're very social animals, which in my opinion is a suitable answer because you found it in the text, you would not get the mark. What they're really playing on here is, how can you tell? What they're trying to say to you is, right, we know they're social animals because the text tells us that, and it's almost got it as a little quote here because it's in italics. How can you tell they're social animals? Basically, what's the proof that they're social animals? It's a really badly worded question, guys. And if you put this, maybe you've done this test already, and you put because the text says very social animals, you know what? Don't beat yourself up. It's a poorly made question, and it doesn't normally happen like that. So the real answer is that they live in family groups. Okay, that's the proof that they're social because they live in family groups. That means there's lots of them together. Really stupid question. Going to move on. There's the mark scheme, by the way. There was a couple of other answers you can have, so check it out as well. I've highlighted the do not accept bit that the text says they're social animals. You can only have references to them living in family groups, reference the fact that they need to communicate, which you find out later in the text, and the fact that zoos need to keep them in pairs or groups. Again, suggesting they're social animals. You find that out at the end of the text. Stupid question. Moving on. Number 4. Why are beetle larvae suitable food for street tenrecs? Right, this is a really good question because you just got to do a little bit of inference here. Because it says in this paragraph, tenrecs forage in the rainforest for soft-bodied invertebrates such as worms and beetle larvae. So we're always getting this idea that, okay, that's clearly an important adjective. They obviously can only eat soft things. They sometimes stamp on the ground with their forepaws to create vibrations, which may increase earthworm activity. They have very fragile jaw bones and can only eat soft food. Okay, cool. That backs up the idea that I was just thinking that maybe they can only eat soft things. That proves it now. If they try to eat anything harder, it could damage or even break their jaws. So, 2 bits of evidence here. We know that they can only eat soft food, and it describes beetle larvae as soft-bodied invertebrates. So just put the 2 bits together to answer this question. Why are beetle larvae suitable food for street tenrecs? Because they have soft bodies. Simple as that. If you wanted to put a slightly more detailed answer, you would put because they have soft bodies and tenrecs can only eat soft food. That would be a really good answer, but because it's just one line, I'm going to presume that it doesn't need a much longer description, which it doesn't. I checked the mark scheme. You can have either. Number 5. Draw 3 lines to match each paragraph to its main content. It's really interesting. So we've got the paragraph beginning, imagine treading through, which I've put here. And on the next slide, I've got the next 2 paragraphs as well. So we've got diet, behavior, and appearance. They're all quite different, so hopefully we can work it out just by reading it. So skimming through this bit of text here, you start to realize that it's describing the way they look. Look, 10 of them are sniffing along the ground with pointy snouts. That's a description, like birds. They're quite small. That's a description about how they look. Maybe the size of a pet hamster. Their bodies are round and covered with spikes. This is clearly just describing what they look like. Nice and easy. Now, we've got the 2 next paragraphs. We've just got to work out which one's diet and which one's appearance. Well, luckily, this is really short. So, both Highland and Lowland Street tenrecs are very social animals and are the only kinds of tenrec that live in family groups. Well, that's talking about how they behave, isn't it? It's their social behavior. So that's going to go there. And then finally, let's just double check. I think we could probably guess. If it starts with tenrecs forage, usually we only use the word forage when we're thinking about like looking for food in the wild. So I can almost guarantee that goes to diet without even reading it. Just a bit of common sense. But yes, this paragraph that we read before does confirm that that's all about what they eat. And we've discovered they eat soft-bodied invertebrates. Moving on to number 6. Look at the sections, what do tenrecs eat and what is stridulation. I like it when the tests do this, guys. I like it when they pick words that most kids probably won't know. Okay, because it doesn't give anyone an unfair advantage then. There's not going to be many children that know what that means. And it's great because it means that you actually have to work things out by reading the text. And the text makes it very clear what it is. So if anyone's thinking, I don't know what that word is, and panic, well, the text is always going to help you out there. You don't have to just know that. First part of this question says, which part of their body do tenrecs use to encourage worms? I love that, this idea encourage. That means like make them do something. Well, in this text, in this paragraph we've already read, it actually says here, they sometimes stamp on the ground with their forepaws to create vibrations which may increase earthworm activity. In other words, if you use our inference skills and we just reword that, they stamp on the ground, presumably with their feet, to make the earthworms move around and maybe come to the surface so they can eat them. That's what the common sense tells me. But all we need to know is what part of their body do they use. And actually, we'll use the exact word, their forepaws. You'd also get a mark for paws, by the way. or even feet. All of those answers were in the mark scheme. And then B is, which part of their body do they use to make sounds? Well, in the stridulation bit here, it says very, very clearly, retrieval question here, a streaked tenrec has special spines on its back that it can rub together to produce high-pitched squeaks and chirps. Okay, so it's very specific. What part of its body is it using? Well, these special spines on its back. When you can, take it directly from the text. You can't get it wrong if you quote them. Special spines on their backs. That's a very clear answer. Okay, if you just put spines or spine, you'd also get the answer. But if you just put their back, you wouldn't get the answer because that's not the specific body piece, part of their body they use. That the specific part of their body they use just happens to be on their back. So it's one sort of layer removed if you just put back. So you've got to mention the spines. That's where you get your mark. Number 7, look at page 5. Those ones are always interesting because you're looking at an entire page, but usually, like I've done here, you can find the bit of evidence you need in a small section. When do streaked tenrecs communicate using stridulation? So if I'm thinking about my test skills, this is a when question. When do they do it? Well, this little paragraph here says, sometimes streaked tenrec families get separated and they need to communicate with each other. Easy. Okay, when do they do it? When they are separated. That's it. Or from family. Let's put that. From family. I'm pretty sure you can just have when they're separated. But there we are. We've used evidence from the text to answer that when question. Number 8. The text uses other animals to help describe the streaked tenrecs. It does. There was that first paragraph when we looked at matching it to appearance that was describing the way the tenrec looks, and it was comparing it to lots of other animals. It says, draw 4 lines to match each feature to the animal that it's compared with. Well, luckily, I've got that first paragraph here again, and I've highlighted in green the bits where it describes what it looks like, and they're all quite clear. It says they have pointy snouts that look like bird beaks. So snout goes to bird. They're covered with spines like a hedgehog. Okay, spine goes to hedgehog. They're brightly coloured like a bumblebee with yellow streaks running down their backs. So that's nothing to do with sounds, but that's to do with the markings on their body. So markings are like bumblebee, and that only leaves one. So there's no point checking it. Sounds goes to cricket. And we know that anyway from the last one that says they make sounds with their back that are like high-pitched chirping sounds, like crickets. So these questions are quite easy. And to be honest with you, I reckon a lot of kids, just from common sense, could do this. Spines obviously matches with hedgehog, right? Hedgehogs have spines. They're spiky as well. Bumblebees, black and yellow, they're very distinct with the way they have markings. So I think you could probably work out half of that just with a bit of common sense, to be honest with you. Number 9, look at the section, what issues are streaked tenrecs facing? What serious problems are streaked tenrecs facing? So what serious problems is what we're going to be looking for in this text. Let's have a look. Streaked tenrecs are unique to the rainforest and can be found anywhere else, cannot be found anywhere else in the world. Okay, that's not a problem, is it? That's just a fact. So that's the first trap. That's not a problem they're facing. It's just a fact about where they live. In recent years, much of this landscape has been destroyed. Okay, that's a problem, isn't it? If they're living there and it's been destroyed, so their homes are being destroyed, that's a clear problem that they're facing, isn't it, right? As a result of deforestation, where humans cut down the rainforest, tenrecs are in decline. Okay, there's another problem they're facing. They are in decline. That's not a good thing, is it, if you're in decline? That is something that they are facing. And that's it. There's your 2 answers. The homes are being destroyed. You could have put something like there's deforestation, ruining their environment, or some, another way of wording that. And they are in decline is your second mark. Nice and simple question there. Just looking at the text, finding the evidence. Number 10, same paragraph here, is why are streaked tenrecs important to the rainforest? So let's think about that. The key word there is important. Why and important? Let's think about it. Let's keep reading. So far, we've just learned that, it's bad for them. Streaked tenrecs play an important role in their habitat. This seems like a good sentence to be using. As they hunt smaller creatures and are prey for larger animals like birds and snakes. Okay, I'm getting an idea of why they're important. Let's see if the next sentence does anything for us. Without tenrecs, the whole food chain could be disrupted, causing serious problems for wildlife in Madagascar. Okay, do you know what? I could probably just take that entire sentence and put it there as an answer. Why are they important to the rainforest? Well, without them, the entire food chain is disrupted. Fair enough. There we go. That will get you a mark. Number 11. According to the text, why are street tenrecs rarely kept in zoos? So really important you understand that word, just means not often. Why are they rarely kept in zoos? Well, the text is very straightforward here. It says, while there have been efforts to help tenrecs by keeping some in zoos, so basically saying even though we try to keep them in zoos, this is not necessarily the best solution due to, this right here is telling me the because, I know the next bit's going to tell me why, due to their short lifespan and the need to keep them in groups or pairs. You could have any of those as your answer. So you could have their short lifespan, or you could have the need to keep them in groups and pairs. I think that second part is a more suitable answer, even though they both get you a mark. They're rarely kept in zoos because they need to be kept together. Okay? Sorry for my poor handwriting here, guys. You get the idea. So number 11, all quite straightforward so far. We nearly finished section 1 as well. Let's have a look. Couple more questions. Number 12 is how are zoos trying to help street tenrecs? How are they trying to help? How and help being my key words here. Notice I'm underlining key stuff and reading questions twice because do you know what? This is a hard paper and you're more likely to get the answer right if you just read the question a couple of times and get it really in your head like what you're looking for. Is it a how question, a where, a why, a when? Zoos are working to build a population of these animals by breeding them in captivity. That's nice, isn't it? So that people around the world can learn about the marvellous streakiness and squeakiness of the street tenrecs. So back to the question. How are zoos trying to help the tenrecs? Zoos are working to build a population of these animals by breeding them in captivity. That sentence right there is exactly what I'd write there, so I'm not even going to bother. All right, so much of reading comprehension is just you finding the evidence in the text, copying it in. You can summarize it, of course, if you want, but that's how they're helping them, by breeding them in captivity so that they can increase their population, which we learned earlier on is declining. So that's obviously helping them. Number 13, it's our last question. Look at the whole text. Okay, so at this point, hopefully you would have read the whole text as well. And if you haven't, you just kind of gloss over the bits that you missed out. Using the information, tick one box in each row to show whether each statement is true or false. Okay, we can probably do most of it from memory at this point, but I've got the evidence here as well just to help us. There are many different types of tenrecs. We know that's true because it had that whole paragraph about the 2 different types of tenrecs. So there's more than one. Highland tenrecs have white streaks. In that same paragraph, it literally said Highland Street tenrecs are as, and it talked about something, but have white stripes running down their backs. So yes, they have white streaks. Tenrecs communicate by stamping their forepaws on the ground. Really good question. That's a trick. We know that they do stamp their forepaws on the ground, but actually, we remember, don't we, that if I can find it, when they communicate, they do the stridulation thing. They make high-pitched sounds. The stamping on the ground was to get the earthworms up. So that's wrong. They've confused 2 facts there. Tenrecs live for a long time. We literally just read that they have a short lifespan. False. Lowland Street tenrecs like to live alone. Well, we know that's not true from a previous question as well, because we literally answered the question that they're really social animals. And it said both Highland and Lowland Street tenrecs are very social animals. So no, they like living in groups. That is not true. Quite an easy question actually to finish up with if you had just read the text. Most of these answers come from previous answers in the questions anyway. So let's move on now. The second text is called The Girl Who Walked on Air. It was the longest one. It was the middle text, and it was a story, a really interesting story. And it says right here, I'm going to try and read it. It's very small on my screen. This is an extract from a story in which Louie shows her circus skills to her friend Ned. This is the first time she has ever shown anyone her ability to walk across a tightrope. And it was a really nice little story about her and her friend in this little experience. Let's jump into the questions. Again, if you need to read the text, use the link in the information section below, and you can just go and download the text yourself. Her friend Ned was the first person to see Louie walk the tightrope. Why did she choose Ned? Okay, well, right in the first paragraph or two, we can find that out. I was ready. No one had ever watched me before. Jittery though I was, that means she was nervous, I trusted Ned to be straight with me. So why did she choose Ned? Well, there's our first reason. She trusted him. Would that be an acceptable answer? Have a think about that. Is that what the text says? She trusted him. You could be really careful with this sort of stuff, guys. It doesn't actually say she just trusted him in general. I trusted him to be straight with me. What that means is I trusted him to be honest, give me an honest review, a reflection of my ability. She trusted him to be straight with her, is my answer. So just be careful. You don't want to be lazy in this kind of test. You might get the mark for she trusted him, but sometimes the mark scheme is horrible as well. And they're like, no, we're not going to give that mark for that one. You need to be more precise. So always just lean on the side of being a bit more precise. There were some other answers as well. he saw all the acts go in and out of the ring, so he'd know a star turn if he saw one. In other words, he'd know if she was like star material or not. So that could have been another answer as well, because he is well experienced and he's seen all of the acts go in and out of the ring. Number 15 was Ned thought it was just one big prank when Louis wanted to climb onto the tightrope. Why did Ned think that? This is a great inference question because we can work it out from his reactions. Why did he think that Louis was joking about getting on the tightrope? Well, let's have a little read. The rope was now about 10 feet off the ground. Ned watched from the ground. He thought it was all one big prank. Right up until I kicked off my clogs, tied back my hair and asked him for a leg up on the rope. You ain't getting up on that, he said in amazement. Of course I am. It isn't safe, Louis. You can't just get up on the rope and, well, do it. It's a proper skill. It takes years of practice. So there's lots of things here we could pick out to get this answer right. There's a few answers you could put from the mark scheme as well. Why did Ned think she was joking? Well, you could say because it's not something you can just... He knows it's not something you can just do without practice. And he obviously doesn't know that she's been practicing. Okay? You also get that kind of sense here of surprise. You ain't getting up on that, he said in amazement. So clearly Ned had no idea that Louis had been practicing this. So Ned didn't know that she could do it. And it's a really hard skill to learn. So that's sort of showing... Let me just finish that off. That's sort of showing that there's a good reason there that Ned did not think she was being serious, because he had no idea that she could just do this thing that takes years to master. Look at page 6. Write 2 things that Louis had to do before walking the tightrope. This is a straight retrieval question. Look at this. The rope was now about 10 feet off the ground. Ned watched from the ground. He thought it was all one big prank. Right up until I kicked off my clogs, tied back my hair, and asked him for a leg up on the rope. There are 3 things there. You just need any 2 of them to get the mark. Now, if you literally put... She kicked off, I'm not going to write it. She kicked off her clogs, or she took off her shoes, in other words, and she tied her hair back, you get the mark. If you put, she tied her hair back and she needed a leg up onto the rope, you get the mark. So nice, easy one there. 3 options. You only need 2 for the mark. Number 17, what was Ned doing every day while Louis practiced? Again, you can just read this nice retrieval question in this little paragraph here. It said, I'd been practicing every morning for as long as I could remember. Sentence before that. And that while he, Ned Bailey, had been snoring away in his cozy bed. He'd been sleeping. Okay, that's it. He'd been snoring away in his cozy bed. He'd been sleeping. He'd not been doing it. There's the evidence. Number 18. How do you know that Louis had thought about tightrope walking for a long time? Well, quite simple, really. There's a nice phrase here that says, for as long as I can remember. So the answer to that one would simply be, and I'm not going to write it, guys, it would be because she's thought about it for as long as she can remember. Simple as that. You just got to use that exact phrase from the text to prove that you understand that it tells you this information. All right? 19. Read the paragraph beginning, help me up, I said, to the paragraph ending, feel wonderfully light. So I'll put that here for you. In fact, I didn't go all the way to the bottom because this is as much evidence as you need. But this paragraph ends with feel wonderfully light. Write the numbers 1 to 4 to show the order that Louis got onto the rope. I thought this was a really hard question, guys. I actually love this question, but it was quite tricky because every single element here has been sort of rephrased based on the words that we use in the text. So let's think about this. With these ones, I'd always just read the 4 things first and then try and find them in the text. So we've got balancing on her stomach, standing up straight and looking forward, looking down at Ned, and pushing off of Ned's hands. So let's think about this. Read it from here. Help me up, I said. So he cupped his hand for my foot, and on the count of 3, he heaved me upwards. Okay, there's number 1. She pushed off his hands. Okay, but notice how it was rephrased, cupped his hand for my foot and heaved me upwards. You just need to know in your mind that that means he put his hands out and she put her feet on it and he pushed her up. So it's a good question for that. Let's keep reading. I moved onto the rope until I lay flat across it. Think about what that means. If you're laying flat across it, then you're either laying on your back or you're laying on your stomach. And there's only one of those exists here, so it's obviously this one next. Louis balanced on her stomach across the rope, and also it makes way more sense, doesn't it, that she'd get on frontwards. Imagine her getting onto the rope with her back, and then just being on her back on the rope and being like, oh, what do I do now? It's just nonsense. So you've got to use a bit of common sense there as well. So we've got 2 things left. Slowly, I eased myself into a crouching position. Nope, none of those. Now I was a lot taller than Ned. The thought made me giggle, or maybe it was just my nerves. I've got a bird's eye view of the top of your head. Okay, think about that. A bird's eye view is when you look down at something. And she's talking to Ned. So, Louis looked down towards Ned is number 3. See how it's rephrasing the words it uses, but in a really clever way. Great question. And then the last one must be 4, but let's just check. Shouldn't I stay here? No, blah, blah, blah. My mind went quiet. I stood up slowly, counted to 5, and focused straight ahead. Cool, that's definitely the last thing that happens. Really good question. Love that question. Great test of your comprehension skills. Number 20. Look at page 7. Louis said to Ned, now step back and watch. What 2 things does this show about Louis? These questions are always, like number 1 from the first question we did, are just asking you to explain what these words mean. Now, step back. What does that mean? What's that implying? And watch. What does that mean? What's it implying? Well, let's think about it. Step back means that she obviously doesn't think she needs him there, right? So let's see something that reflects that. She wanted Ned close for safety. That's the opposite of what we just said. She was confident that she would be safe. That's what we just said. She didn't need him there. Let's keep going. Now, watch simply means she wanted him to watch, right? She wanted him to look at what she was doing. She was showing off by going backwards. No. She wanted Ned to be able to see her properly. Yes, that's exactly what that means. So there's my final answer. The last one was she was teaching Ned how to do it. So no evidence for that. So do you know what? The 3 that we put crosses through are complete nonsense. So you could have answered that just by getting rid of the ones that make no sense anyway. Sometimes a good way of doing it. Number 21 was look at page 7. So I put the whole page there for you. Give 2 pieces of evidence. It's a 2-mark question. Give 2 pieces of evidence that tightrope walking is difficult. Okay, well, this one's quite straightforward, really, because there's quite a few bits of evidence, I think, in this. So let's have a look. First one that jumps out at me is this here. Ned says, shouldn't I stay here just in case you fall? So I would literally quote that right here. Okay, and if I was a bit worried about whether that was good enough evidence or not, I'd just explain what that means. Shouldn't I stay here just in case you fall? Which means Ned thinks it's difficult. Ned thinks it's difficult to do. Okay, a really clear answer. I'm definitely getting the mark for that one. Now we've got to look for something else that suggests that it's difficult to do. Let's keep reading through. My mind went quiet. I stood up slowly, counted to 5, and focused straight ahead. The entire world had shrunk. Do you know what you could say about this bit here? You could say that she had to focus extremely hard in order to do this. So I'm going to put that right here. She had to focus extremely hard. I think that is evidence that it's difficult, because if it wasn't difficult, then you wouldn't need to focus so much. You know, her mind going quiet, standing up slowly. The evidence you might use is the fact that she stood up slowly, if you wanted another bit of evidence in there as a quote. So quite a tricky question, that one, because nothing in the text says this is really difficult, because you just had to infer from the way the characters were interacting and thinking, and the way the narrator was, which is her, was talking about her experience, to be like, oh yeah, that clearly shows that it's difficult to do. Really good question. Number 22. Read the paragraph beginning arms out to the side. How can you tell that Louis was feeling more confident on the rope at this point in the story? So feeling more confident on the rope at this point in the story. So in other words, we're looking for something that suggests that she's more confident than she was just a minute ago in the text. Okay, let's have a little look. Arms out to the side, I took a step forward, then another, left foot, right foot, sliding forward along the rope. When I reached the other side, I stopped, turned right round to face the way I come. The only movement was in my ankles as they worked to keep me upright. I started walking again, this time making more of a show. Well, 2 things are jumping out straight at me then. Firstly, she goes all the way there and back. Like, she doesn't just stop at the end and get off. So she actually does it again. She turns around. She turns and walks the tightrope again. Walks it again. And there was another really good point, I think, in that same sentence. Let's have a look. This time making more of a show. Okay. She makes a show of it. Or she shows off. She makes a show of it. So there's 2 answers you could do. Let's just see if there's anything else. Flourishing my wrists. So you could even put that. She flourishes her wrists. That would get you a mark. Stopping to crouch down and stretch out each leg in turn. She's doing tricks at this point. Okay, she stops and does fancy moves. It felt good to be watched. That even that shows that she feels more confident, because she obviously thinks she's doing a good job. So there were loads and loads and loads of bits of evidence there. You just had to pick 2 of them to get the 2 marks. Number 23, look at page 8. The flames were there inside me. I love this metaphor, isn't it? There's not really flames there, but what does it mean metaphorically? How did Louis feel at this point? Well, if you know the metaphor, the flames were inside me, it's kind of like, it's like you're an engine, you know, you're getting fired up because you're excited. Excited is the answer. Hot would be very literal, but excited is actually what that metaphor means. Number 24, focus, Louis. Who said this and how? Well, first of all, it's the narrator saying it, and we know that Louis is the narrator. It's her story from her point of view. So now we just got to think, it's not Ned. Ned didn't say this, okay? We know it's her saying it to herself in that paragraph. But did she say it out loud or in her head? Well, she said it in her head. That one was a fairly obvious question. If you just read the text and you understand that she's just quite often talking to herself and psyching herself up, you know that this was in her head. Look at page 8. How can you tell that Louis enjoyed performing to an audience? Well, guys, do you know what? There's 1 mark, but I've put loads of things here that you could have picked from. How can you tell that she enjoyed it? So again, how can you tell and enjoyed are really key parts of this question. Well, I spun on 1 foot like a dancer. That's pretty cool. She's enjoying performing right there. She breathed in sharp. Eventually, at the other side, I leaned on the tree trunk and grinned down at him. She's grinning. There's another one you could do. She's smiling. The flames were there inside me. That actual quote from the last question is also just proof that she's enjoying it because it means she's excited. So you could literally just use the same quote from the last question and get a mark. And the last one could be that she did it again. Okay, so she obviously liked showing off because she kept on doing it. Tons of ways you could have got 1 mark there. If it was me as a kid, I absolutely would have just played on the fact that the last question gave me this answer, and I would have put the flames quote again, because why not? And then number 26, our first 3 marker. But you know what? It's not too bad of a 3 marker. And I've actually just put the answers down here for us to look at. Look at the whole text. Because it says whole text, I couldn't really fit it on the screen, guys. So we're just going to talk about it. Write 3 pieces of evidence that show that Ned was nervous about Louis' tightrope walking. Well, oops, sorry, guys. Would you know what? Ned was nervous is what we're looking for. There's loads of things Ned does to show that he's nervous. And here they are. I've picked them out in the text for you. You ain't getting up on that, he said in amazement. There's my first quote. That shows that he's nervous about it because he's doubting her. You don't even have to prove it, by the way. It just says write 3 pieces of evidence. So literally just write the quote. Number 2, it isn't safe, Louis. You can't just get up on the rope and blah, blah, blah. The fact that he thinks it's not safe shows that he's nervous about it. There's another one in here. You could actually call this number 3 if you want. It takes years of practice. So he thinks it takes years of practice and he doesn't know that she's done it before. And let's call this number 4. Shouldn't I stay here just in case you fall is showing that he thinks he's nervous that she might fall off. So he thinks he needs to be there to support her just in case. He doesn't think she's going to be able to just do it. So there's 4 things that you could have picked. You needed 3 of them to get all 3 marks. It was quite a standard question, really. Even if you got 1 or 2 of those bits of evidence, you still get 1 or 2 marks. So a great question for getting some easy marks. And number 27, look at the whole text again. It's our last one of this section. Draw 3 lines to match Louis' feelings to the moment that she felt them. You could probably do this from memory quite easily just by thinking about the text. But I've put some evidence down here as well. This was the first line from the text. I was ready. No one had ever watched me before. Jittery though I was. And then it carried on, basically saying as nervous as I was or as anxious as I was. So before going on the tightrope, she was anxious. And then we know right at the end of the text, it says, back on the ground, I felt suddenly shy in my too big tunic and old tights. Ned seemed unable to speak. So that's the last line of the story. So back down on the ground, she's shy, which only leaves 1 more. While walking along the tightrope, she was focused, which we definitely know because there were loads of questions that really made us look at that part of the text where she was like super focused when she was walking across the tightrope, or at least when she started. So again, quite an easy question really if you just read the text and answered the previous questions as well. Let's look at the final text together now. It's called The Leopard. So again, another fiction story. Now, if you think about the length of this video, guys, we're sort of 35 minutes in-ish. And you get an hour to do this test. And I am trying to do every single question properly with you. But you've got to bear in mind that you'd also have to do some reading time as well in that. So if we can keep this under 50 minutes, then I think we know that this paper is answerable in that time. Let me know how you feel in the comments, by the way, about the time. If you've already done this paper, how did you feel? Did you finish the paper? Or did you find that you had some questions left? If you are just doing a bit of revision now, what are you thinking so far? Which section did you find the easiest or hardest? Let us know in the comments down below, guys, because the comments really help us with interaction and getting these videos out to more people. And do, of course, like and subscribe. Let's carry on. The leopard, 2-page story this time. This is my favorite section. Mad, right? Normally the third section is the one where I'm like, oh, it's tricky and horrible. This year, I genuinely think it was harder to read. It was more complicated in the way it was written, but the questions were much more straightforward, I thought. Let's see if you agree. Read the first paragraph beginning, I first saw the leopard. Ruskin noticed several signs that the leopard was nearby before he actually saw it. Give 2 signs that the leopard was nearby. Okay, well, let's read it. Let's find the signs that the leopard was near. I first saw the leopard when I was crossing the small stream at the bottom of the hill. Well, surely that's the first sign. He saw it when he was at the bottom. As I began climbing, the grunting and chattering increased. Okay. So there's a really good one, isn't there? The grunting and I'm not going to write it, guys. You can just imagine it's there. The grunting and chattering increased. So that's him hearing it before he was seeing it. As though the monkeys were trying to warn me of some hidden danger. A shower of pebbles came rattling down the steep hillside. There you go. There's your next thing that happens just before he looks up to see it. So that would be my 2 bits there, guys. One was to do if he heard it, and the other one was to do if he saw the pebbles come rattling down. And then the next thing that happens is he does then actually see it, as the question says. Pretty cool question. 2 marks for you there. Number 29. He must have sensed my presence. What does sensed my presence mean? You don't need to see the text to think about this one, really. You just need to know what that phrase means. If you sense someone's presence, it means you become aware of that they're there. So what does sense my presence mean? Become aware he was there. Simple as that. Okay? It just means you, or you could have put he knew that he was there. Simple as that. He melted into the shadows. What does the word melted mean in this sentence? Again, another metaphor here, and it's asking you to sort of unpick and explain what this is actually doing. If someone melts into the shadows, then it just means they disappear. That's it, really, isn't it? You don't have to overthink that one. Melted into the shadows. He's gone. Disappeared. Went from sight. Something like that. Melted, just go back actually a second. Melted also suggests that it's kind of a smooth action, right? So it could have been something that, he moved smoothly or silently. That would also kind of get you the mark as well. And if you put them both together, he disappeared silently, then that really backs up this idea that melted is this kind of smooth action of something disappearing. Read the paragraph beginning, he was not looking toward me. What did Ruskin think the leopard had been doing before he noticed it? Okay. Let's read this whole paragraph. I've highlighted in green the main bit that's going to help us here, but I want to just read this paragraph to you. He was not looking toward me, but had his head thrust attentively forward. So we know the leopard's not looking at him, but it was doing something. Yet he must have sensed my presence because he slowly turned his head and looked down at me. He seemed a little puzzled at my presence there, and when, to give myself courage, I clapped my hands sharply, the leopard sprang away into the thickets, making absolutely no sound as he melted into the shadows. I had disturbed the animal in his quest for food. So this whole paragraph is really lovely because it builds up this idea that the leopard was clearly doing something else. It wasn't looking for Ruskin, the guy. It was doing something else. And this last sentence here just sort of summarizes exactly what that leopard was doing. It was looking for food. In other words, it was hunting. Okay? If you put either of those options, it was looking for food or it was hunting or it was on its quest for food, then you would have got the mark. That's what it was doing before Ruskin scared it away. Number 32, read the paragraph beginning the leopard, like other members. In the first weeks after he saw it, what sign did Ruskin have that the leopard was still in the area? So the first week, in the weeks after, so we're looking for that bit that's right here, that's talking about not his first sight, but some weeks before I saw the leopard again. So in other words, time has passed. It was some weeks before I saw the leopard again, although I was often aware of its presence. I wonder why. The next sentence tells us, a dry, rasping cough sometimes gave it away. He heard it coughing. Very straightforward retrieval question. Number 33, look at page 11. Find and copy one word that shows the hunters made Ruskin uncomfortable. So we're looking for a word that means uncomfortable. So if we read through this part here about him talking, in fact, I will read it to you because it's useful for later questions. Leopard skins, they told me, were selling in Delhi for very good money. This is from the hunters. Of course, there was a ban on the exports of skins, but they gave me to understand that there were ways and means. I thanked them for their information and walked on, feeling uneasy and disturbed. Uncomfortable and uneasy definitely mean the same thing. But really interesting paragraph about the hunters and how he clearly doesn't identify with these hunters, does he? They're different to him. He's not there, clearly, to do illegal hunting of like skin exportation because it made him feel uneasy and disturbed, which means he did not like the idea of that. Useful for later on. Number 34. Look at page 11. How did the hunters know that there was a leopard in the forest? One mark, but we need to give 2 ways, which means there's probably going to be 2 straightforward ways. Let's have a look. The hunters had seen the carcass of the deer. Well, there's the first thing, isn't it? They saw the carcass. Carcass, by the way, just means dead body. Like a carcass, you can imagine a lion eating the carcass, or a leopard in this situation. They saw the carcass of the deer. So that's one bit of evidence that they thought the leopard was still around, because it had been eaten. The carcass is kind of what's left over. And they had seen the leopard paw prints. Okay. They saw leopard paw prints. Do you see what I mean, guys, about this last section being a bit easier, in my opinion? I just think it's way more straightforward. The evidence is much more clear. Those 2 bits of evidence could not be more clear in that sentence. They saw the carcass of the deer and they saw his paw prints. And we go back to the question, how did they know the leopard was there? Like, they so obviously answer that question, don't they? So a bit unusual for a third text. Normally it's a bit more cryptic than this. Read the paragraph one day. What made Ruskin suspect that the leopard was inside the cave? What made Ruskin suspect that the leopard was inside the cave? Let's have a look. One day I was out walking and came across the entrance to a cave. The silence was so absolute that it seemed to be ringing in my ears. Is that evidence that he thought the leopard was in it? No. If it was silent, then that's not evidence. But there was something else of which I was becoming increasingly aware. The strong feline odour of one of the cat family. Feline literally just means like cat, and odour means smell. So do you know what I would do? Even if I didn't know what that means, I would take that exact phrase right there and I would write it here rather than trying to rephrase it myself. You could just put the strong odour, that would be fine. You could put the strong cat smell, that would be fine as well. But it's always better to just quote the text, right? The strong feline odour of one of the cat family. Always better to quote the text, unless it's number 3 in this paper where it for some reason didn't give you the mark for quoting the text about them being social tenrecs. I told you I wasn't going to rant. I've done it again. Right, number 36. Look at page 11. Using information from the text, tick 1 box in each row to show whether each statement is true or false. Well, I've got all the evidence down here, guys. And again, if you just read the text at this point, it's fairly straightforward. Exporting skins was not allowed. We know that's true because of that bit we were looking at earlier with the hunters where it said, of course, there was a ban on the export of skins. The leopard could be heard from outside the cave. We just read that paragraph and it literally said the silence was so absolute. There was no noise in that cave. So that's false. The hunters used their weapons carefully. Well, there was this bit in the text here, just after the paw prints bit, where it said, almost every evening, I heard their guns banging away, for they were ready to fire at almost anything. That is very strongly hinting that they were not using their weapons carefully. They were just firing willy-nilly all over the place, not really caring about using the weapons properly. And finally, we haven't read this bit yet together, so you probably would go back and read the text here. But if you kept reading on after that, there was a bit about the pine martens, which we can only presume are monkeys, because it says, and even the monkeys had moved on. The pine martens, who had previously become bold, now dashed into hiding at my approach. So the pine martens were scared of him. Well, yeah, that seems to be exactly what's happening. By the way, I just realised I ticked that one wrong. The hunters used their weapons carefully. That is not true, is what I was trying to say. So if you were screaming at the screen there, don't worry. I fixed it. I saw it. So there we are. True, false, false, truce, true, to get us 2 marks. We're nearly there, guys. 37, 38, 39 are the last questions. How are you thinking? What are you feeling so far? Are you thinking this third text is easier than the other ones? Or am I just being a bit naive because I'm a teacher and I'm used to reading this sort of thing? I don't know. Read the paragraph beginning, I paused, to the paragraph ending, ignoring me altogether. There you go. It goes from there to there. Tick 1 box in each row to show whether each statement is something Ruskin knew or something he imagined. In other words, he thought was true but wasn't able to prove. So there was no movement inside the cave. Let's have a look. It says, there was no movement of dry leaf or loose stone. And that was talking about in the cave. So yeah, he knew there was no movement in the cave because it says it in the text. The next sentence is really interesting. Look how it starts with perhaps. Doesn't that mean there's possibility? Perhaps the leopard was crouching in there in the dark. The leopard was hiding inside the cave. Ruskin didn't know that. He imagined it because he said perhaps. Okay, he didn't know it for sure. And the next one, so that was the key word, by the way. The leopard recognized Ruskin. Well, look, again, it uses this lovely phrase to prove this. I like to think that he was there, that he knew me. It doesn't say that he definitely knew me. I like to think that he knew me. He was imagining. Again, it wasn't a fact. He was imagining that the leopard knew him because he liked to think that in the same way he liked to think that it was down there, it crouching in the dark somewhere, even though he couldn't see it. He didn't know that. You might be thinking, yeah, but he smelt it. Does that prove it though? If he could smell a feline odor, does that prove that that leopard was in that cave? It doesn't, does it? It's a bit of evidence that it might be, but he doesn't know for sure. It could have been another leopard or even just another animal altogether that he confused the smell with. So there's the answer. 1 mark for all 3. Pretty tricky there. It was quite nasty. Number 38. Read the paragraph beginning, perhaps I had made. I did not venture any further. Which of the following is closest in meaning to venture in this sentence? So we don't need the text for this one. You just kind of need to know what venture means. And if you know it comes from the word adventure, venture, adventure, you might be able to make a link there. I did not venture any further quite simply means I didn't go any more. I didn't continue my adventure because he's clearly on an adventure. I didn't adventure any further. Basically, I stopped. I didn't think about things? No. I didn't plan ahead? No. I didn't ask questions? No. I didn't dare to explore. In other words, I didn't dare to carry on with this adventure. Absolutely, yes. Couldn't be more clear as an answer. Guys, we are at the final answer. Can you believe it? Now, with this one, I've got the answers here behind here. Here behind here. I can't speak. But I just want to read it with you first and remind you of how to get... This is a classic 3-mark question. The only one in the paper that's like a traditional style where you just need 2 points and just one of them needs to have good evidence to get 3 marks. I always say to everyone, please try to evidence both though, because then if one of your bits of evidence is not very good and the other one is, you could still get 3 marks because you got 2 points and 1 good bit of evidence. The other bit of evidence is just not very good. So it said, Ruskin's personality made him different from the hunters he met in the forest. I agree, and we read that paragraph, didn't we, about how he felt uneasy and disturbed by what the hunters were saying. So he clearly is different. Explain 2 ways in which his personality made him different from them, using evidence from the text to support your answer. So if you want to have a go at this one, guys, get the text and have an actual go at this one yourself to try and find 2 reasons in the text that it gives us that shows undeniably that his personality was different from the hunter's personality. To do this, you need to kind of think to yourself, what is the hunter's personality? Okay, and then you need to think, okay, what does Ruskin do? What does it say about Ruskin that's clearly the opposite of that? Once you've done that, feel free to come back. You can pause the video if you want, or you can just have a look at me now with the answers. I'm going to go straight to the mark scheme and show you all of the different things you could have got for this one. So you only needed 2 of these, and one of them needed evidence from the text to back it up. So you could have said that he's protective and respectful towards the nature. You could have backed that up by showing that the hunters were keen to kill stuff and he was disturbed by that fact. He's non-violent. You could have backed that up by the fact that he said he will not carry a gun. So that kind of suggests that he's actively trying to show that he's not a threat. He's ethical, law-abiding, or not mercenary. In other words, he follows the law because he was disturbed by the fact that they were hunting the skins. He is brave. Well, he is brave because he carried on going deeper for a while, even though he knew there was a leopard around. And he had no gun, you could say that. He is solitary. Yep, he was by himself, whereas the hunters were together as a little pack to protect each other, I guess. And he's reflective. So I've got an answer for you on the next one. I wrote a possible answer for you. This is what I think. Here is an answer that if you could get 4 marks, this would get 4 marks. But remember, like I said, you want to make your point, prove it with evidence. And I'm going to show you 2 ways of doing that. So here's my first one, watch. He didn't want to kill any animals. That's my point. So that's how he's different to the hunters. There's 1 mark right there. Now I've used a great word, since, or because, something where I'm showing I'm now going to prove it with evidence from the text. Since he didn't carry a gun. Cool, there's my evidence from the text that backs up the idea that he didn't want to kill any animals. I'm on 2 marks. My next one, I've done it differently this time to show you this phrase that I often tell you to use if you've seen my other videos. Because the text says. Such a great way of just getting a quote in from the text directly to back up what you've suggested, unlike the first one, which is kind of summarizing the text. He cared for the animals, okay, which we're saying is different to the hunters, because the text says, they asked me if I had seen a leopard. I said I had not. So we know, don't we, that he's lying in the text because he doesn't want the hunters to go and hunt the leopard and kill it. So that shows that he cares for the animals. So again, I've got 2 marks for that one as well. So I've managed to reach my maximum of 3. But let's just say that this bit of evidence was really poor. And the marker says, you know what, that doesn't really back up. He does care for the animals, so you got your 1 mark there, but this evidence doesn't back it up. You still get 3 marks because you got your 2 from that one, you get your 1 from this one. It's just a nice safety net to do, isn't it? All right. And that is it, guys. We're at the end of this video. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found that useful. Let me know in the comments kind of where you are on your journey. Have you taken your SATs already? Are you watching this because you've done it and you wanted to see the answers? Are you taking your SATs in the future and you're just revising, trying to get good at these sorts of questions? Or what? Let me know. And do stick around because we've got more SATs videos on our channel. Go and check them out. We've got walkthroughs from most of the years, to be honest with you. And if you're watching this week when I've released it, then go and check out all of the other 2024 SATs walkthroughs, GPS, and all 3 of the maths papers are there as well. Guys, thank you so much. And like and subscribe, leave a comment. I'll see you in the next video.